know who it is. Father Moo on the microphone. I must have turned off the reverb because there's no more reverb today, but the sound card is crashed, so I can't adjust it. Oh well, no big deal. Here's an old patch of mine called Mr. Tiny. I have no idea what I was trying to do here. There's like a sine wave droning. There's a bunch of crazy clicky sounds. It's all really complicated. The knobs are mapped. If you turn up this one, you get some noise. The clicks change their frequency. That green one is messing with the clock speeds of at least 3 clocks. It's all crazeled. But we're not going to work on Mr. Tiny today. I was talking to our previous contributor. I called him something else before, but now I know he likes to be called Jerome. And he was talking about how he never uses this bad boy here, the Mr. 12%, the Drum Oscillator. So just looking at what we got here, Oscillator A at 11 is still less than Drum Sound Synthesizer at 12%. So except for Oscillator Sine Bank, which is really 6-in-1, Drum Sound Synthesizer is the most complicated or the most processor intensive of the modules. So as I said, he's not the first person who ever told me, like, yeah, I don't use the drum synth modules. I like to make my own drum synth sounds, and more power to you. We already had the drummer from Another Planet earlier in the series where I tried to do exactly the same thing. But what he was saying gave me a different idea, which was, you all saw me emulate the Monotribe, where I looked at each of the different elements and said, okay, it's got an oscillator, it's got a filter, and it's connected in this way. And then I took an oscillator and a filter and I connected them in the most similar way I could and came up with the emulation of that. I don't think I can emulate all the things that the Drum Synth OSC does, but the knobs right away are telling us a lot about it. So without any further preparation, because I never ever do any preparation other than writing 3 lines in the Notepad app on my phone on the way to work, let's take a look at the drum synth and let's try to rebuild whatever elements of the drum synth we can, because the knobs are the windows to the skull, as a wise man once said, by which I mean whatever we read on here is giving us hints about what's happening under the hood. I can tell you right away there's some things we can't know. For example, velocity. How does velocity being input here affect the sounds? For example, if you hit this with a positive velocity, it might increase the bend amount, or it might decrease the bend amount. There's no way to know because we don't have the inner workings of this oscillator on display. So I probably won't be emulating the velocity sensitive functions of this oscillator, and I certainly won't be emulating the presets, but what I can do is I can look at the labeled elements and I can build parts that I think match up to those labeled elements. So let's do that. Starting on the left, we've got a trigger and we've got a pitch input. Well, we're going to use oscillators later, so those will have pitch inputs. And as for a trigger function, well, we're going to need an envelope at some point, and we'll use an envelope which we will trigger to allow the sound to play. Of course, we'll probably end up with more than one envelope, but there will be one sort of master envelope that is the voice of this drum synth. So in this section, it's labeled OSC for oscillator. And on the left, it has a master, and on the right, it has a slave. So right away, we have 2 oscillators, which are being used to create drum sounds. If I flick through the presets, you can see the master here is at 67.3, and the slave is at a multiple of 1.24 of that. So they've adjusted the tune knobs in those ways. Here they've got decay knobs on each, which means each of these oscillators decays at different times. Well, this actually, they may have been set identical. No, this one is at 219, and this one is at 308. So we're going to need envelopes for them within the concept of the master envelope. And then finally, we just have level. That's easy enough. Well, I don't know which oscillator they used, but I'm going to guess they probably used a sine wave. There isn't a filter on these oscillators, and I'm assuming they're doing FM with them. So let's do it their way. I don't know if this will work, but I'll try it. As I said, the Nord offers a function called a master oscillator, which, as you can notice here, it doesn't have an output. It responds to the keyboards, and it accepts pitch inputs. This button being down means that keyboard tracking is activated. So if you hooked up a MIDI keyboard and played it, it would track, if you played a high note, it would play the same note. And if you turned this off, it wouldn't, and it would just play whatever it was assigned to, in this case, E4. So let's leave keyboard tracking on for now. It doesn't have an output for sound, but it does have a slave output. So the goal here is, because master osc only uses a tiny amount of processing power, if you use him plus one slave osc, this one will be 3%, plus 0.76, you can have an oscillator for 3.76, whereas the similarly priced oscillator at the bottom of the price scale, C, is already 5%. So it's trying to give you more options. Or what a lot of people do is stack oscillators. So let's say they're like, yeah, I want an A, I want a C, and I want an E. Well, if that was using oscillator B for 3 different waves, that would be 8.3 times 3 is 24.9, almost a quarter. But if you used A, C, and E, I'm just guessing, you'd be lower than that, even if you had the master oscillator as well. So anyway, here it has separate tunings from master and slave. So I think we still need 2 under its control. By that I mean, that's a saw. There we go. So as you can see here, you connect slave to master. Please do not write in any letters about the political incorrectness of this configuration. But although this is the first one here is labeled the master osc, here I think we have 2 oscillators because we have 2 tuning controls and 2 level controls. So really this is just the controller. This one is going to serve as the master, and I'm going to use another sine wave, slave E, to be the so-called slave oscillator. So I set this one to, here it says 67.3 hertz. I could find that on here. We're setting this to, there's 3 different ways to look at the pitch setting. You can look at it in hertz, or in multiples of an octave, or in relationship to the original octave. So there's 60. Gotta use this little button here. It'll give me 65 or it'll give me 69. So I'm gonna leave this on 69 because that's nice. And then slave here is at times 1.4. So I think if I leave him on this, 1.24, and here it gives me 1.33 or 1.25. That's closer. So I think I've done it. I've got the relationship between these oscillators mapped out on these 2 guys here. It's the relationship to each other that matters. And they're both under the control of the main one. If they play a low or a high note, that's what it does. And they've got their decay and level. So that means I need the simplest envelope here. There's really no music to listen to for this one today, but keep following anyway. We'll get there eventually. So we'll leave the attack as where it's at because drum sounds almost always have a very fast attack. But decay here, I'm just going to keep using kick 1, the preset, and try to dial in the numbers. So master should be 219 milliseconds. You can see this one's at 520. Let's take him down to 219. Awesome. And this one, 308. I'm going to use the buttons again. 308. Perfect. And then finally, they have the level amount. And you can see that actually this guy's almost at max 120, whereas this guy's at 102. So I'll take a little 3 inputs mixer, because I don't have a 2-input mixer, and plug those in. There's 1. There's 2. I bet this guy goes from 127. Yep, so set him to 120. Same as here. And 102. I didn't actually, when I started this plan in my mind, I didn't even think I would be able to match the numbers up. And I don't even really love kick 1, but it's what we got, so let's match them up as best we can. So to recap, we looked at this here. We said they've got 2 oscillators with tuning controls, decay controls, and level controls. I have to use a whole module, even if this has a attack, which I don't need to change. I need a module to emulate the decay, and that's what I'm doing. And I also need this guy to sync these up and be the team leader sort of for these guys. So, yeah, or here in the mixer, I didn't use a 3rd channel, but to get to my emulation, this is what I need to do. Let's keep on going. So this section is called noise filter. Wow, that already told me a huge amount. I know that I'm going to need a noise osc. I guess you could also say that I've broken my traditional module building rules as I have this guy sitting here as our model on display, but it's not the end of the world. And in the filter part of things, I can see high pass, band pass, low pass. So that tells me I need a filter that can do the same thing, so-called multi-mode filter. There is a static multi-mode filter, but since this one has a frequency and a resonance knob, I'm going to use the one that also has those. So let's hook noise up to input, and well, for now at least, I'm going to plug this in here. I think here's something I can't see. I can't see if the noise filter goes through any kind of processor before reaching the output, but that's the way it goes, I guess. So yeah, I've chosen to patch it in here because it's got to go. It reaches the output somehow, right? So we may as well put it there. Here the frequency is shown to be 277 hertz. Here you can see he's at 330. Let's dial him down 277. And resonance at 32. Here's resonance. Dial him up to 32. Wow, if I hook this up and trigger it and it plays a kick sound almost like this guy, I'm seriously gonna shit. I can't say that on YouTube. I'm gonna do something fun. And here we go. We got sweep, and then we have decay. So I think what we can emulate that with is an envelope. Decay at 283, I'm going to set decay at that. And I can't be sure, but I'm thinking that what they labeled as sweep here is probably attack, because as I said, most drum sounds are going to, hit you right out of the gate with a very short attack. They don't want to fade in slowly. But if there's something sweeping the noise, that's going to happen during the very limited amount of time the drum sound plays. So it may be caused by increasing the attack amount by, well, let's see how much they have here. They've measured it as a 39, whereas mine is in milliseconds. So since I can't quantify it the same way, I think this is somewhere between 10 and 11 on a clock. So I've put this one at somewhere between 10 and 11 on a clock as well. Let's give him a little bit more. That seems reasonable enough. So although you'd often see me patch an LFO into the frequency input, this time I'm going to patch the control signal out of the envelope into that input. Here I have another unknown. How much does it sweep it? I can't tell you. So I'm going to put it at about 50% and hope that gets the job done. Of course, this gate will need to be triggered whenever these gates are triggered, which is also when the main voice gate is triggered, but we haven't hooked those up yet. So first part of the sound, oscillators going into the mixer. Second part, noise through a filter into the mixer. We covered all these, right? Frequency, resonance, sweep, I treat it as attack, and decay as decay. Set bandpath. Well, here you have a switch, and here you have to pick a wire, but it's the same thing. And finally, we have bend. Okay, bend. I have the strong feeling that when they say bend, what they mean is an envelope connected to the pitch input of the oscillators. You can't have a pitch input on noise, but whenever I studied briefly about emulating things like trombones or trumpets, they often have the envelope that goes on the overall sound, the VCA. You got the envelope that goes on your filter, which would be like this guy down here. And then you have a third if you have a third envelope on your hardware synth, its default patching is probably to the pitch input of an oscillator to emulate those sounds which exist in the world where the pitch bends or changes at the beginning, but your ear doesn't really hear it as a change in the note. Your ear hears it as a characteristic of the original sound. So here I have amount and decay. So same thing. He has 806 milliseconds. I'm going to set this one to 806. And then I have amount at 68. Well, is this one numbered? Great. I'm going to set the amount to 68. Again, am I guessing here? Yeah, absolutely I'm guessing. But it's the closest I can get. Feel free to write in with angry letters if you don't think that's the right one. Here we've got click and noise. So this is weird to me because we already have noise filter up here, but I guess the overall noise level is what's being controlled there. So this is really like this knob in my guess. So since he's at 115, I'm going to dial him down to 115. And we're almost there. Click. Darn it. Okay. Since I've already set these mixer levels, I was going to make a... Oh, here's another mixer here. Great, let's use it. Okay. I see. Okay, now we are hearing the noise coming through this channel instead of being triggered. So let's take that out. What I forgot about was the overall voice trigger. But I still need a click in my sound. Okay, how am I going to do this? The most accurate way I can think to make a click is to use a percussion oscillator, which sounds like I'm cheating if I'm trying to emulate a percussion oscillator with a different percussion oscillator. But I know he has the function click. So I've turned his decay to 0 so we don't hear any of his tone. We can ignore these. He also has a function of punch, which to me sounds similar to click because it sounds like something which is affecting the very beginning part of the tone. So anyway, click is here, and he's got click set at 79. So let's set this guy to 79. Oops, let's map the knob again. 79. And I've already adjusted these mixer settings. So instead of deleting this and putting in a 8-to-1 mixer, I'm just going to make another mixer. I don't really care about processing power. We're not even at 40%. So there's the sum of our previous sounds. And again, noise mapped to noise. And these levels here map to these levels here. So they should be all in balance. So running them into channel 1 is fine. And then the level of click was matching this click. So he is going to go in there as well. And after all the sounds are all mixed together, they have to go into a master voice, which will be triggered by trig here. So yet another 2-stage envelope is required. This is the real voice of the synth. Sadly, we do not know how long this decay is. What we do know is we've set decays within the sound, but we have to sort of set a master decay. Otherwise, especially this noise is going to be coming through all the darn time. Oh, I see what I did here. Okay. I may have gotten ahead of myself. So let me recap. Here we have decay, 283 milliseconds. Here we have decay, 283 milliseconds. But this could be wrong. Why? Because this is not decaying the whole noise sound. It's just decaying the filter response. So this is a screw up. I'm going to set this one back to, what is the default? 520? I don't know what else to set it to if it's at default, so I'm going to use 520 for now. But I'm going to basically say decay has not been, this decay, 283, has not been emulated yet. So how am I going to emulate it? You guessed it. Yet another friggin' attack decay envelope. And I'm going to patch the noise output after the filter into here. Come on. Got away from me. I'm going to patch the output into here. So the level still remains the same. And this decay amount is the decay for all noise after it hits 283 milliseconds, the famous 283 milliseconds. And again, the sweep is sweeping the filter frequency, but it's not changing the attack of the noise, if you see the difference there. Kind of subtle, but I think we got it right. So every gate takes the same gate. This is the master gate for the drum. And I'm just going to hook them up now. There's one yellow. Sure, let's kill the red and blue for a second and just look at yellow. There's a gate. There's a gate. There's a gate. They're all still white because there's no source for them to go off of. There's a gate. There's a gate. And there's a gate. Here's a good time to tell a very old, bad joke. Most modular synth people will know the phrase, you can never have too many VCAs. Well, to make one drum voice, I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 VCAs. And probably a 7th if you count the fact that the percussion oscillator kind of has one built in. So, yeah, there are really 7 VCAs in this patch, as well as 7 envelopes to go with them. So that's it. I can patch it into the final output. This is really like the monitoring mixer. This is not part of our emulation. And here's that kick sound that we originally tried to emulate. Put the cables back in. So we'll be able to hear the drum synth on channel 1 and the emulated drum synth on channel 2, which will feed into our mixer. Wow, this is like a big reveal. So finally, let's hear it. Tired of listening to my voice yet? I should have put on some music of my own in the background. Note to self. So that we can hear what's going on, let's make an event sequencer. The 1 is going to be one of them, and the 9 is going to be the other one. Are you ready for the drama yet? I'm ready. So the very first sound you should hear should be kick 1, and the very second sound you should hear should be kick 2. And if they're the same sound, as I said, I'm going to lose it. So Dial him down just because I always do. And are you ready, children? Here we go. Time for church. Come on. 3, 2, 1. Okay. It's safe to say they don't sound the same. Oh man, that is not what I was expecting to come out of the thing. Is it still a cool percussion sound? I think so. I want to ask myself, why doesn't it sound like this? Maybe this setting here should be implemented here. So why don't we dial this guy down a bit in hertz? This guy is... So in order to do what I'm saying here is this guy should go back to, unity. In other words, he is not detuned from the master oscillator in any way, and the master oscillator is what's tuned to 67.3, or as close as we can get. Oh my God, is this actually going to fix it? $67.3. There's 67.3, and the slave is at almost exactly the right multiplier of this. And we still don't have the same thing, do we? There's a lot more noise in my homemade drum. Let's keep on tweaking here and see how close we can get. So this is I'm hearing more noise, so I'm going to dial the noise level down. I'm going to dial the overall level up. Stupid red knob. And turn this guy down a tad. Well, that didn't solve the problem, but I will say, when I listen to both of these kick drums, although the one I made doesn't sound like the one I was emulating, it sounds like a drum. It doesn't sound bad. In some ways, I like it better than the multiple drums I made in Drummer from Another Planet. I don't know what it is exactly, but I like it. The real drum, or the original drum, has a more open, less noise-sounding sound. Just adjusting whatever I think will work here. See how this actually changes how the noise works a lot. Dial it back up. There's the noise up. This is the attack for the noise frequency. See? One thing we never thought to set was, we don't know if the noise is colored or white, so what if we do this? Well, even all the way over at the right doesn't give us the same thing. I also think the gate for this one is a bit longer, so I'm going to open up our master voice. There we go. Again, I like the new one. I mean, it's not a real kick drum, but I like it. I can't not like it. I don't know. I just think that's good. So I had a good laugh when I started it up there, but did I build a drum voice that I think could make usable drums? Absolutely I did. This guy's using 12% of our processing power, so without him, we're still at 36%. So you could really only have about 3 of these and do a bit of sharing on the mixes or whatever. But you could get 3 of this voice in a patch and make 3 interesting drum sounds. Maybe some other stream I will do exactly that. So let's save this bad boy. Yeah, I don't want to toot my own moo here, but I really am happy with what we got. It's not that I'm happy with the sound we made. I think I'm happy with the flexibility and what I heard just messing around with it briefly in this session. There's a lot of potential for sound there. I mean, you could say the same thing about the original drum oscillator, and I would. I like the original drum oscillator. I don't like sticking to the presets. I like to tweak them, but I think I learned a lot more about how they made their sound just by doing this, and I want to do this kind of thing more in the future. In my hardware modular, I have a kick drum module, and I really like it. It's called the Asteroid Bass Drum. It's a very, very old. It's now 10 years old as a Eurorack module, one of my first. But I find if I need a kick drum, I just go to that and I dial in some settings, and it usually sounds awesome, so why would I change it? But so that means I've never done what we did here today, sit down and take all the building blocks and actually make the drum myself. So I named this guy One Big Drum because that's what he is. He's big and he makes one sound. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as I absolutely did, and I look forward to putting myself through this in the future and making the drum from scratch. I want to actually go back and make more sounds in this drum and like take just this configuration that we have here, maybe copy it 3 times and use it to make 3 completely different sounding drums just to show what it can do. Because we know this guy can do this, and he can do that, and that, and that, and that, and all he's doing is messing with the different presets, right? So anyway, thank you so much again for tuning in. Please like, please subscribe, please get your mom to buy my altcoin. My altcoin is coming out soon. No, I'm just kidding. But I do keep thinking about setting up the Patreon, mostly for my own amusement. And yeah, you might see that sooner than you think. Thank you so much. This has been One Big Drum with Father Moo. I am out of here.